Welcome to another episode of Conduct Detrimental. Dan Luss joined by a full house this week. Mike Kravchenko, Taran Sharma, and a special guest this week, Alex. Alex, how do I pronounce your last name? I've always messed this up.
Volcano.
Volcano. Relation to Sal.
That's different.
You are related to Sal Volcano?
Just like very, very loosely.
This is a great development. Some of you listening to this
Look at this
podcast
guy.
might be asking, who is Alex Volcano? Alex Volcano was, I was going to use an adjective, but grades haven't been released yet, so I'm not going to say that. Alex was a very memorable student in my PACE sports law class. And from time to time, I like to have my students on the class, the ones that give me endless flack from the crowd and sit in the front row, raise their hand a lot, but they're nice to Professor Luss. So we will have Alex on. We'll talk a little bit of the class, a little bit about some legal issues surrounding the Knicks Pacers series. Game 5 is tonight while we're recording this. We'll have some bets, some predictions at the end. Now, beyond that, we will be talking about, in no particular order, Darin Ruff, the former San Francisco Giants first baseman. Taran, who's the guy? Mac Williamson had the similar injury years ago, sued. Same concept. Mac Williamson.
Good pull.
Yeah, great call. Colorado Rockies lawsuit. We're going to do some comings and goings in college. Guys, anything else I'm missing that we think is important? No. Mike, that was your opportunity to say that we forgot to talk about the Brett Favre documentary last week. We will talk about that at the end. Okay. A reminder, our podcast is sponsored by Themis Bar Review, top bar prep company in the entire galaxy. So last week we mentioned in passing that we might do a panel event, a breaking into sports law event at a New York-based law school. I've actually heard from several of you. Now we have to figure out which school we're going to host it at. And then I found out of some crazy rule, which am I allowed to say? Am I not allowed to say? Let's just say some New York-based schools are very friendly to Themis and some are not as friendly. I did not know this, but all students should love Themis. Just despite the fact that some schools might like another bar prep company, that doesn't mean that you, as a listener of this podcast, should not bleed Themis blue. Yeah, I said it. So to the extent you are in New York, or if you're anywhere, if you're in any state and you want to host a sports law event, let me know, because Themis, world domination. Mike, I'm going to need you to cut this clip and send this to our friends at Themis so they know we're just spewing good things all the time.
Yeah, this is the greatest ad read maybe they've ever had. So you got to clip that.
Obviously, because I did it. Okay, that said, let us get rolling. So every once in a while, again, I like to have students on the podcast. Sometimes they're former students, sometimes current students. So Alex is not a current student. He just took my final exam. He had some lovely things to say about me about the final. We're not necessarily going to have to talk about that yet. But Alex, the reason we wanted to have you on is I asked you to do some little homework. Lest you do a homework assignment. Find a topic that you find to be important. And interestingly, you picked a topic that was not on our show list. And that is the return of one John Halliburton to the Pacers series. So I asked you to do some research into kind of the history about people being banned from sporting events. Obviously we can talk about, Donald Sterling once upon a time being banned for life. This is somewhat of a unique scenario. And sometimes I'll ask my summer associates to do research. Sometimes they don't. They just say, Dan, there seems to be no precedent for this thing. So, Alex, I don't know what the answer is. In terms of John Halliburton, Tyrese Halliburton's dad being suspended, why don't you give our listeners the background, what's going on? Because I'm hoping that we see John Halliburton again this series, which would mean the Game 6. But go ahead, Alex.
All right. So first off, thank you, Dan, and everybody else for having me on the podcast. This is a great honor of mine. And yes, Dan did reach out and ask me to do some research on a sports topic that I found to be current and lively, and none other than, because we're in New York, we're going to talk about the New York Knicks. And adjacent to the New York Knicks, you have the Pacers and John Halliburton. So I think we all have seen, if we are sports fans, when Tyrese Halliburton and the Pacers beat the Giannis Antetokounmpo-led Bucks in a major comeback. John Halliburton, Tyrese's father, ran onto the court and got into Giannis's face, and Giannis really didn't like that. He found that to be extremely disrespectful. John Halliburton was screaming something like, we're here," and things almost escalated into a physical altercation. John Halliburton, I think, had to be escorted off the court. Nobody really knew what was happening. And then Tyrese Halliburton, afterwards, I think he hit a game-winning shot, or he had a very great game that game. He said, like, that shouldn't have happened. He's going to talk to his father. And then maybe the next day the Pacers announced that he would not be allowed at any of the games for the indefinite future, and that lasted throughout the end of the Bucks series and also all the way through the Cleveland Cavaliers series. And so when we pick up here in the New York Pacers series, hotly contested, these teams go back a long way from the 90s. And now last year they had a big series that went to Game 7 where the Knicks ended up losing. So now this series, the Knicks had a dramatic collapse in Game 1.
We're not having you on to talk about the Knicks. We'll talk about the Knicks at the end. I would like to know in your research, and this is the answer. This because we did this on the pre-show, and I asked the question, and I now I think I kind of know the answer. But you gave me a lot of compliments, which is nice. But you can also there is no historical precedent for what's happening here.
There was no historical precedent, and I was laying the groundwork for getting to that, Dan. So Dan jumped the gun here, and as you know, there is no historical precedent for a prominent basketball member's father being banned from attending road and home games. He was brought back to sit in the suite this last game, and now he's not traveling on the road with the team, but hopefully we will see it again in Game 6. Fingers crossed.
So, listen, Alex, this is just like it's my classroom. It's my show. So, like, if I feel you're meandering a little bit, I kind of have to jump in and guide you to the promised land. You could tell I like Alex a lot, so it's all good. Listen, I think it's interesting, and he got suspended for 9 games, which I thought was so odd. It went through the Cavs round and all the way to the conference finals. It's almost like there's an expression, right? Like you can't be half pregnant. You can't you're either pregnant or you're not. I don't understand the basis of suspending him for 9 games. It seems so arbitrary, right? Like we and Mike Kravchenko, you'll remember this, and obviously Darin, you're familiar with this. The fans that ripped the ball out of Mookie Betts' hand during the World Series, like those guys are banned for a long time. They're not banned for like a couple innings. They're not banned for like 2 games. Like that obviously happened in the World Series, so it's a little bit different. But why does Halliburton's dad get 9 games as opposed to for the rest of the playoffs? Like, give him some real time to think about what he's done. So I don't know, Mike, Darin, thoughts on the arbitrary nature, and at least from my call, and I guess I'll say this: the Yankees wanted the Yankees as a team wanted those fans to come back. Those are the fans that tried to rip off Mookie's glove. And Major League Baseball stepped in and said that they were not allowed to be at the game because it set a bad precedent. You know, this podcast is all about precedent, finding precedent. That's what we do as lawyers. I think it sets a pretty bad precedent that a father of a player can run onto the court and challenge Giannis to a fight, and now he's allowed to come back during the Knicks series. Like, I don't know what we're doing here.
I think it was a poor sport, but 9 games seems to be a pretty significant penalty. At any of those points, the Pacers could have been eliminated and he would have missed the end of the playoffs. But look, I think that we don't want to be heavy-handed with either way that we talk about this. We don't want to say that he was punished extensively because, as Tyrese Halliburton said, he had his feet up in the crib watching some NBA basketball, so life was not bad for him. And then on the other hand, we don't want to say that he should have been punished more because, look, what he did was wrong. He was a poor sport. He went out there. He was gloating in Giannis's face. Giannis is a champion. Totally unnecessary, totally unbecoming of John Halliburton. Also, not even his accomplishments, really, right? They're his son's accomplishments. So I think 9 games, arbitrary or not, probably an appropriate punishment. They let him come back. If you notice, they didn't put him on the floor like he was in that Bucks series. Instead, he was up in the suite, very far away, could not harass Jalen Brunson. That would have caused a fight. Rick Brunson would have been over there all up in John Halliburton's face.
Okay, so Rick Brunson, remember when he got into the fight with Dante DiVincenzo? Was he suspended for that? That's a dad. Was he suspended?
No,
I don't think he was.
I think that they were just told to not be that way. It was preseason.
Well, this is why I find it somewhat interesting. So, and Alex, I asked you that question for a particular reason, and I did mention I was going to bring up my exam in the class. So I have now, and I've talked about this in the podcast, I give a multiple choice exam because they don't pay me any extra for grading all the exams. They pay me for teaching the exam and administering an exam. And if it's all multiple choice, guess what? None of the students can yell at me. The questions were this and were that. And listen, well, hold on. Just hold on for a second. I have not submitted grades yet, Alex. So you're on very, very light footing. No, but if there's no disputing certain answers, and if the results bear out that multiple, like everybody got different answers, and it's an allocation that seems like there was no clear answer, I throw out the question. I try to be very fair. I look back, and for you guys, I think I threw out 10 questions. Now, sometimes the exam's open book, sometimes it's not, but I try to make the exam non-Googleable or non-AI-able. I try to make it very tricky to trick the machines. So Alex, I gave you a question that was very easily Googleable, and very easy AI-able. And you think I'm going to say something that I'm going to catch you in something I'm not. I AI'd this because, why not? The answer I think is none. The answer I think is that this never happened before. Now, the one that I thought was interesting that I would not have thought of, but maybe this podcast is sponsored by ChatGPT because this is very helpful. Darin, you're going to love this one. Do you remember what happened with T. Morant?
Yeah.
T. Morant is pretty similar.
Courtside.
Wasn't it T. Morant going after, was it your boy Shannon?
Yeah, they got into a altercation.
Little altercation. No official ban. Family members were warned, right? Okay, apparently there was an incident in 2009. I didn't know this, with LeGarrette Blount's family at an Oregon Boise State game. And then there was the LSU women's basketball player last year. That brother ran out of the stands and almost punched Camila Cardoso, I think is who it was. So we don't have official bans. I guess Patrick Reed's family was, banned during the 2014 U.S. Open because this says from a family rift. So anyway, I give you that context. And in the grand scheme of things, this surprisingly has not happened before. So in 9 games seems arbitrary, but in the wake of better precedent, I'm not sure what else we do with it.
Before I head out, let me say one more thing. I cannot say enough good things about Dan Lust's sports law class. It made waking up on Friday mornings bearable. It was a nice change of pace from the stuffy doctrinal courses we had a lot of in law school. I think all lawyers know, like, sometimes you can just get bogged down in the details, and it was nice talking about interesting current sporting events and sports topics, and not only analyzing them from a legal point of view, but also from a business point of view. He did a lot of hypotheticals of, like, what would you do in this situation if you were the lawyer, or what would you do? Especially one that comes to mind was like the Luka trade with the Lakers, because that was like earth shattering in the NBA world. He said, like, how would you have created the leverage if you were Rob Pelinka, or how would you have created the leverage if you were Nico Harrison? And so those types of things really take you out of the classroom and into practice, and I really appreciated that. Dan is not good at gambling, not a good bettor, so always fade his picks. Always fade his picks.
This is insane blasphemy, but
ultimately, I cannot recommend taking his class. If you have the opportunity to take his sports law class, it's really interesting and a really fun way to spend 2 hours on a Friday morning.
Alex, that was very nice. This will not impact your grade in any way, shape, or form, but certainly that was very nice of you. Okay, Alex, do you want to tell people where you're working, maybe? And then sometimes we have, maybe some sports opportunities will flow your way. Go ahead, and then we'll get you out of here.
Sure. So I am working this summer at a firm, Kirkland & Ellis, in the city, and then coming back to pace for my 3L, and hopefully going on and crushing it out in the world. I will definitely, hopefully, become a recurring guest on this sports law podcast if Dan likes me enough and I did well enough on my in the class, because he will definitely be hearing from me if I did not. And we'll see what happens.
Okay, so I'm going to let you go. I did not ask you to prepare for this. You're going to have about 15 minutes to text me a betting pick, because you keep telling me how horrendous I am. I don't see that you have any winners to your name. So
I think we have one winner to my name on that backdoor cover for Bama during March Madness. Does anybody remember that?
No one
remember sweating it. I remember sweating it.
No one remembers that.
Oh,
okay. Text me your pick. It'll be on the end of the podcast, so It's all good. And maybe if you get it right, you'll be back on.
Okay, all Alex, right, thank you guys so much.
All good. Good job.
All right, I'll see you guys later. Bye.
Great job, Alex.
Okay, so that was Alex Volcano, who is interestingly related to Sal Volcano. He did not want to talk about that.
Real impractical joker, this guy.
Yeah, he was, but you could tell why I liked him. I've taught this class for 4 years. Yeah, almost 5. But like, I teach fall and spring. I teach a couple schools. Um, I like my students that they like. I give people a hard time sometimes. Like we like to mess around in class. He gives it right back, and he said like the third time I give 3 losing bets at the end of Friday classes, March Madness related, and he goes, Dan, walked into the class on Friday morning. I'm like, I'm sorry about last week. I'm really cold, guys. I promise I'll turn this around. And he goes, don't worry, Dan. I've been making a lot of money fading your bets every week. And I'm like, where did that come from? But I respect it. I respect it, and I obviously like Alex. So all good. Okay. On the wheel of topics, I see Sankey. I see not purple stuff, but pink stuff, and I see Darin Ruff. Maybe I don't think there's much to talk about with this. An Indiana Pacers fan stabbed the Knicks fan after game 2. Okay, we're not going to give this guy a highlight for stabbing Knicks fans. That's terrible. Or Tyrese Halliburton throwing up choke signs. That's also terrible. What lessons are we teaching to our youths that we could just throw up a choke sign? We should throw Tyrese Halliburton in jail, right? He shouldn't be doing that. Maybe tonight, maybe in advance of game 5. Okay, I'll stop talking.
How do we feel with that as opposed to the gun celebrations that they've been really trying to cut down on? I don't know.
Yeah.
Where does that stand?
Who are we to say that like choking is okay, but guns are not okay? They're both bad. I'm here. And Darin, before we move on to the next topic, we have a bone to pick with you. Are you ready for this?
Oh, okay.
Do you remember when you said Jax Ulrich, the Falcons shouldn't be punished? That sets a really bad precedent. That doesn't make sense. And I'm like, Falcons should be punished. They're recklessly having information out there, and he's an employee of the team. They should certainly punish the Falcons. The Falcons got punished, and so did Ulrich. I think it was like a total of close to $500,000 in fines.
Yeah, I still disagree with it.
Okay.
Just because a decision was made doesn't mean that it was the right decision or necessary.
When it benefits me, we're going to use it as precedent. Otherwise, maybe not. Okay.
And Darin, when it's helpful to give the opposing viewpoint, I'll argue it.
I like it. Okay. Speaking of opposing viewpoints, Darin Ruff, Stefon Diggs, Greg Sankey. Spin the wheel of topics. Where do you want to take us?
It's Diggs. Diggs is the biggest story right now. He signs a 3-year, $69 million contract. You got a new coach in New England, and he's out on a boat missing OTAs, handing out some mysterious pink substance to women who are not his very famous girlfriend, Cardi B.
I think the thing that is particularly peculiar about this, certainly Diggs is one of these guys, super talented. He can't find a home. He was on my Bills, he was on the Vikings, Texans. Now he's finding a new home in New England. And New England, obviously, we're past the Bill Belichick era, but this is still known as a no-nonsense franchise. And it's Mike Vrabel now taking over and stepping into the shoes, and I guess not directly, but one step removed. But he wants to institute the old Patriots way into effect. So, per reports, Diggs is not at OTAs today. And Diggs is their main toy. They did not have any wide receivers all of last year. Every wide receiver that goes to New England goes to New England to die. And they've really, ever since, I don't think they've had a number one guy since Randy Moss. And Diggs is the most high-profile receiver they bought in many, many years. And, I think he's, I don't want to say the biggest loser of the day because God knows there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. But yeah, this is a terrible look. And we talked about this offline. Darin, Mike, you're going to educate me, okay? And the fact that you might know the answer to this, no one's allowed to pass judgment. What is this substance called that Diggs had? Is there a name for this? It doesn't look like a substance that I've ever seen before.
Yeah, I had to look it up. I also didn't know until the video came out, and yeah, you find different things. It's, I think, Tussie. I don't know. It's pink cocaine, allegedly, is what's being assumed or thought to be in that, which brings up, I don't know how he's even going to play this. I believe he's out until week 4, I believe, with an injury, and then now with this, that brings up possible substance abuse policy, conduct detrimental, shout out.
Detrimental.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that this can go, and yeah, I mean, being on video during OTAs, even if you are injured or like it's just on a new team with new coaching, new everything. There's a new culture that needs to be built. So,
Young
regardless of
quarterback,
what was that?
a young quarterback who
Yeah,
you're trying to build rapport with.
regardless of the pink substance, I mean, being there, I feel like you got to be at OTAs and be learning the culture and everything. So, not a good look, but yeah, like you guys are talking about one of the hottest conversations on all sides. I mean, my mom texted me about it. Like this has gone beyond just our world. So, yeah, definitely one of the hottest stories.
Hey, you never want your mom to hear about a sports law story like this. That's
Yep.
definitely not good news for Stefon Diggs, and probably means that there's increased scrutiny, especially at the NFL level. So, something to watch for. It's a guy who had a ton of success, but has run his way out of certain situations. Obviously, the trade from the Vikings to the Bills for a first round pick. That first round pick ends up being Justin Jefferson, who was at OTAs yesterday. Diggs also, NFL fans will remember there were these videos that they would do in the locker room for the Vikings. And the question was, who was the player on the team that you wouldn't want to date your sister? And everyone said Stefon Diggs. So, look, this is a guy that they just guaranteed him a quarter of $100 million. Is somebody that they're looking to stabilize that position group, as you mentioned, Dan. They haven't had a ton of success at wide receiver. They really need to give weapons to Drake May. This offseason has been all about surrounding May with the best talent possible. He had a pretty solid year as a rookie, despite not having those weapons, and so that is the focus. And for this to happen right when things are really getting started in the Vrabel era is not great, and not something that I'm sure Vrabel was happy to see. Very Patriot way response, though, in that he said that they're going to handle it internally, which is Vrabel speak for we're on to Cincinnati.
Yeah, listen, I can't disagree with anything that was said. I was alluding to the fact that this, and listen, ChatGPT is a very helpful tool. Right now, I'm on the free version. We'll see if I upgrade. I just don't want. I use it a lot, and I kind of do like when it cuts me off. It's a very nice feeling. This Tusi or Tussie, I guess, according to what's out there publicly, it is called pink cocaine, though it is closer to an hallucinogenic. It is a little bit of a different drug, despite having that name. So again, looking at precedent, we're all just hearing about this for the first time, so it would be very surprising if any athlete had been suspended for it. And at least as far as I'm aware, there have been no public reports of a player ever being suspended. So, this isn't like run of the mill, like a drug that maybe doesn't shock us, right? Like this is something a little bit new, a little bit different. And it wouldn't shock me to see him being made an example of in some way, shape, or form, even if, right, Darin, if he's injured for the first 4 games. That's what's out there publicly.
That's what we've seen so far.
Let's say they quote unquote suspended him in a period of time that somewhat overlapped with his injury. I could certainly see that. And just going to be the difference, not of availability, but the money in his pocket, because otherwise he's getting paid for those first 4 games. So we'll see. Just something to put out there. Fantasy. We're nowhere close to fantasy season, but we got to think about those things. Okay, I don't have anything else on Stefon Diggs. I think just looking at our clock, I think we can talk about Darin Ruff. We safe to talk about Ruff. Mike, you want to take it?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned obviously San Francisco Giant Darin Ruff, but also a brief New York Met Darin Ruff. Darin and I were actually just chatting before. What'd you say?
I said traumatized.
Yeah, we were talking about all the trauma of the Mets catchers. Not a catcher, but Darin Ruff is, on those obscure Mets lists, definitely over time. But yeah, right now he's in the news. His career ended, I guess, somewhat short for sure. I mean, in June of 2023, he was playing for the Brewers at the time and was at the Reds home stadium, Great American Ballpark, playing first base, his position. And during the play, obviously, it's very natural that if foul ball, first basemen go and run into foul territory, near their first base side. They're pursuing the ball, likely have their head up in the air, but he collided directly with a metal tarp roller that was positioned at the edge of the field. It was relatively, I feel like I remember the clip circulating when it happened, but, didn't know that it had really gotten to this point. The tarp roller apparently had sharp metal edges, lacked padding or any protective covering, which is huge for that whole area if you're going to have any ball in play. So the collision ended up causing a fractured kneecap and severe lacerations on Ruff's right knee, and he was immediately placed on the 60-day IL then, but he never returned to the MLB, which is really the basis of this entire lawsuit, because in May, just this week, Ruff ended up filing suit against the Reds, alleging that the tarp roller created an unreasonably dangerous condition that completely permanently ended his career. So it's interesting, what he's really alleging, the plausible negligence and recklessness of the Cincinnati Reds for failing to maintain any sort of reasonably safe playing environment. So he's looking for both compensatory and punitive damages, but yeah, MLB stadiums are expected to meet certain safety standards, especially on the both foul territories. That goes all the way down. Beyond Major League Baseball, it's college, high school, everything. So, this happening in Major League Baseball is definitely pretty interesting. And yeah, I would definitely, as someone, we were just talking about players like, Darin, what are your thoughts on like the Reds, both their ability and obligation there, and just where you see, I guess, this moving?
Yeah, I don't know that there's much of a case to be made. Obviously, that is a danger that if the Reds were aware about, maybe that contributes to it. Any lost wages. Ruff was earning about $3 million in 2023, so that would be significant exposure for the club if they are found liable. But I think that ultimately this is preempted by what the CBA says about disputes between players and clubs, and that this will probably go to arbitration and be settled that way. So I find it unlikely that a lawsuit would prevail. We've seen some similar ones. One that I saw that was pretty interesting when I was looking into this, D'Amico Ryans, when he was playing for the Eagles, was playing at Houston and got hurt on the field at Houston and then tried to sue the Texans for that. Obviously, he's now the head coach of the Texans, so kind of a cool full circle thing there. But I don't believe that progressed. You brought up Mac Williamson, Dan, for the Giants. He tripped, I think, on the bullpen mounds, which used to be on the side of the stadium. Now they've been moved to the outfield, but he ended up getting a concussion that significantly affected his career. He wasn't able to continue playing, and I don't believe that went anywhere either. That was about 5 years ago, and I wasn't able to find anything new on that.
So it's funny you said that. I had a reporter called me maybe this time last year, and he knew we had covered in the podcast. I guess I don't know how he saw that I had said something about it, but he said, Dan, I know you were covering this case. I can't find anything on the docket. Are you aware of what happened with Mac Williamson? And I said, I looked at the docket, and I'm like, I gather that it was settled. There's no way a court docket would allow a case to exist for that long and not be settled. But the fact that it was not public report is interesting. It's not the first time, certainly, that's happened. I've had cases, high-profile cases that no one ever finds out about. We don't tell anybody about, and settle very quietly because that's what we want. But certainly we can make noise. The other one that we'd be remiss if we didn't mention, Dustin Fowler, not to be confused with Dexter Fowler, an outfielder for the Yankees, who in his debut in 2017 for the Yankees, I remember this. He was running, I think he was playing right field, very similar injury. He's trying to catch a ball in foul territory, and there was what was called an unpadded electrical box at the White Sox field. And he was running to his right, kind of like trying to catch a ball in foul territory, approaching the stands, and his knee banged into something. So same type of injury, a ruptured patellar tendon. So I guess not a knee injury, but this was settled confidentiality. The only thing that's different, Mac Williamson sued his own team, albeit his former team, but the other two lawsuits we just mentioned are for other teams. So you would think with Mac Williamson, which again, we're not relitigating the case, but he would be aware of the pitching mounds in foul territory. He plays there every day. It's a little bit of a different case. But when you're playing on the road, yeah, you really only have a couple days to figure out the scenery, and maybe you're not used to that. Maybe you don't know it's unpadded. So an interesting case, and shout out to Darin Ruff. Darin Ruff was once at one point he was known as a top prospect. Let's see.
He was pretty good with the Giants in 2021.
Yeah, 2021, he had a slash line of 271, 385, 519. And the year before that, 276, 370, 517. So he did it, albeit partial years. He never played more than 118 games a year, but he had a trajectory. But similar to Matt Williamson, who was known as a big guy, had some moments of power. But that's what happens. Okay, let us move on to the Colorado Rockies. I think this lawsuit, Mike, is a nonsensical lawsuit, similar to the Shedeur Sanders lawsuit we talked about last week. And Mike, you're shaking. Okay, have the floor. If you don't agree with me, go ahead, by all means.
No, I agree with the first part. I don't want to say it's the same as the Shedeur Sanders. At least it seems like this guy actually had something physically happen to him. It's definitely.
It's the garbage he put in at the end of the lawsuit that everyone's making fun of.
Correct. So that's where the headlines are, and that's where ESPN, AP.
Yeah, explain the lawsuit. Not everyone's going to know this.
So the lawsuit is the gentleman was at the Colorado Rockies game on July 16th of 2023. He was watching from a luxury suite, and that's relevant in the lawsuit, at least they're claiming. And that's because during a game, a foul ball had obviously been hit and traveled towards his suite. And they're claiming that due to the suite's architectural design, which includes overhangs and any obstructed views, he was unable to see the ball approaching in the foul, and he ended up being hit in the face, specifically in the right eye. They claim suffering catastrophic and permanent injuries. And here's where, like you said, it gets really interesting. What they're alleging specifically in the suit from this past week, that the Rockies failed to extend protective netting far enough to cover the luxury suites. Also, that the design of the suite blocked or impaired his visibility, preventing him from reacting to a foul ball. But the biggest headline part of all of this is the fact that he's saying that the Rockies' poor on-field performance led to decreased fan attentiveness, which is what they're claiming further contributed to the risk because, naturally there's a baseball rule. Stadium operators and fans assume an inherent risk when you're at a baseball game. I'll be at the Mets game on Saturday and they're actually playing the Rockies, funny enough. And I'll be aware of foul balls hit towards us. That's just naturally, even if you're not watching the game, there's people around you yelling. I don't know. It's very difficult, but they're claiming that him being in a suite, because it's not in a typically exposed seat, but rather in a premium suite, that there's a false sense of protection there, and that that baseball rule basically of being aware of the hidden dangers and hazards naturally, or just a baseball coming through, that you would naturally, it goes beyond the normal fan risk is what they're claiming, that combined with the architectural elements being slightly obstructed, the netting issues, but also that there's the premium suite basically provides a false sense of protection for fans. And obviously the ridiculousness of it is saying that where it is somewhat similar to the Shedeur nonsense, it's just claiming that the poor team performance ends up leading to reduced engagement and people not paying attention to foul balls, that's now putting them at an increased risk of being hit. I mean, why are you going to a game? How that's just, that part obviously is just ridiculous to me. I mean, that's an extreme hot take, but yeah, Dan, I'd love to hear your thoughts when, comparing the two.
So I'll comment very quickly on that. Certainly someone being hit with a projectile, be it a puck or a ball, we have a history of that. We could go back to the fatal incident at the Columbus Blue Jackets game years ago when a young teenage fan got hit in the face with a puck. There's a baseball lawsuit. It was a rainy day. Everyone had their umbrellas up. Their views were obstructed with these umbrellas, and a ball kind of came through the stands, and I think it was an orbital injury. So, and then, on a kind of lighter side, I think there was a fan once that sued the Kansas City Royals mascot for firing a hot dog with a hot dog gun at somebody, and they messed up their eye. So, these lawsuits happen. I don't understand the wisdom of saying that the Rockies were so bad that fans weren't paying attention. You go to a game, at every game and every sporting event, I won't say every game, but most events, there are these signs that say beware of flying bats and flying balls. You're certainly not buying. I don't know why one would buy a ticket to a game or to a luxury box if you have no anticipation of watching the game. I would think you're watching at least half the game, especially if you're in the box and you're not in the concourse. So I just think, I put it this way. I have conversations all the time with lawyers on cases that I'm on where, I get it. Sometimes a lawyer will bring claims, and these are not high profile cases that anybody's going to find out about, but they'll bring a complaint with certain causes of action, some of which are stronger than others. And I'll say, hey, listen, now that we're through discovery, why don't you stipulate to discontinue a couple of these, or, a couple of these, so we can just, refine our cause of action, and we can, if we're going to trial here, these issues can be really narrowed. And we'll have that conversation. If you do this kind of lawsuit on a grand stage, which will get publicity, the lawsuit kind of looks like a joke on entry because of that headline grabbing thing. No one would care about this lawsuit otherwise. So, yeah, I guess maybe someone can tell me the wisdom that this brought a lot more attention to a personal injury lawsuit that we wouldn't otherwise care about. Maybe that's interesting. But I think the Rockies are going to view this as a joke on the initial instance, and they're going to look pretty, I think they'd be less inclined to settle this than they otherwise would because of the bad headlines attached to it. That is my sense of it. I don't know if there's much else. Mike, Darin, anything else on this?
No, I think we're good.
Cool. Darin, why don't you take us to the latest and greatest in college sports? We'll do what to watch for, and then we will wrap this bad boy up.
A few comments this week, most notably from Greg Sankey, the SEC's commissioner. I think probably the one that raised the most alarm bells is that he's hearing a lot of comments as to, why are we in the NCAA anymore? And for those of us who follow the space really closely, I think that we've all been aware that an LLC has been formed. And my prediction has been that within 5 years, the top college football conferences are going to break away and form kind of what we think of as like a super league, and they're going to sell those broadcast rights. And from there, it remains to be seen what is going to happen with the remainder of college sports. I'm particularly concerned about that as it applies to Olympic sports, a lot of which are funded by the money that is coming in through football and men's basketball. And so I think that that's a pretty significant comment that he would say it publicly. I do think that it is a demarcation line, and from here, it's only going to become more public that these conferences are likely to break off, and that the NCAA is in a death spiral.
I like NCAA and death spiral in the same sentence. That sounded fun.
Yeah.
I do find it interesting, and we talked about this a little bit on the last episode, Darin. And I think it's a logical breakaway, right? Like, the conference commissioners are where the power is, and they are taking upon this role, at least by some reports. And I don't know if this is taken shape across all the conferences, but the NCAA is the one that's in trouble with respect to, we'll say, like at the legal level, the judicial level, in terms of anti-competitive activities. Now, the conferences are somewhat of a different animal, at least because they have some buy-ins from the schools underneath them. So it's a little bit of a different legal calculus. And I'm sure someone, one of our listeners is going to tell me that that's wrong, and the conferences also aren't allowed to, have anti-competitive activities. But let's just say it's not on all fours with what's happening in the current landscape where the NCAA is a direct party. So the fact that the NCAA is allowing these conferences to take this power, and Greg Sankey to be making the comments, whereas in previous iterations of college sports, college basketball, college football. Mark Emmert, previous NCAA president, was a constant figure, and we're just not hearing from Mark. From what's Baker's first name, Darin? I'm going to forget now.
Charlie,
Mr. Charlie Baker, in the same magnitude, gravitas that we used to hear from Mark Emmert. So, yeah, obviously it's not a crazy prediction, but in this year, moving forward with the NCAAs might not have that much power. Right? Death spiral is fair. We've been predicting that the conferences could break away at any moment from the NCAA and do their own thing, and television contracts are separate. It's not as hard as maybe some of the purists and some of the new fans might imagine. Darin, anything else to add on college? Because I think we're ready to get to the finish line here, unless you have any more.
No, look, you remember the uproar when it came to the Super League and how that was beaten back by the fans of the European football teams, and I just don't think that we're going to necessarily see the same thing here. I think that there is a real appetite, especially amongst the television broadcasters, to see the top teams play each other more frequently, have smaller point spreads, and to get more of these games in front of national TV audiences. And so I think this is coming. I don't think that the fans necessarily have the same unified outlook here. I don't know if they have the same power to maybe make this push back. But I do think that something great is going to be lost. And a lot of this, I think, is going to be pinned on NIL and on the players. But these decisions are not being made for that purpose. They're being made for an entirely different purpose.
Okay. I think I'm good with that. Darin. Okay, Mike, let's do this. We got about 5 minutes or so before my nanny is off duty and I have to take control. It's what we do. We just squeeze the podcast in. It's just how we do it. So we get yelled at when we don't do podcasts. And then we got to find time to squeeze them in. We got to make it happen. Mike, did you watch the Brett Favre documentary that our lovely AJ Perez talked about?
It's queued up, but I heard that you were able to.
I haven't watched it. Disappointing. So AJ was on the podcast once upon a time, and he gave us a little bit of a teaser, and he said there's going to be this interesting recording. It's going to be on the podcast or on the Favre doc. You guys should pay attention to it. So I'm not sure if he said that online or offline, but it's okay now because the video is out. I'd like our listeners to watch this video. You'll see the recording. The recording is a comment about AJ, to put it bluntly. And it's clearly a recorded conversation involving someone that doesn't like AJ talking to AJ or about AJ. AJ's in the room, unclear. I'm going to say in the room. It could be a phone call. Just listen to it. I think it's worthy of a listen. Yeah, but overall, that the documentary is very good. So people can watch it for themselves. AJ is obviously a long time, probably the longest reoccurring guest we've had on our show. So shout out to AJ, fantastic job. And it was in the top 10 on Netflix for a long time. So don't just trust our opinion, trust all the people that watched it around the world. It's the Brett Favre Untold series. Okay, so we're going to spend not that much time on it. I watched the Osama bin Laden doc. I thought that was very good. People should watch it as well, especially just past Memorial Day. But I told you during the show that I gave Alex about 20 minutes to come up with a bet. And I said, by the end of the show, I'm going to put this bet on the show. Okay. Gentlemen, do you want to know what the bet is? Yes, we would like to know what the bet is. Okay. You could have said no, and then we just wouldn't have allowed Alex to bet on the show. We just would have ended the show and said, we don't like Alex. We're just not going to do that. Alex's bet is insane. Okay. I just did all this research on the Knicks and Halliburton. And Alex's bet is shockingly Indiana Pacers plus 4.5. Okay. The man is from New York. Okay. The man claims to be a Knicks fan and has now just told everybody that he wants to bet on the Pacers plus 4.5. This podcast is going to bet their hard-earned American dollars on the New York Knicks tonight. Okay. Do it for America. Do it for the Knicks. But Alex's bet is technically plus 4.5. But we're betting the Knicks money. We're betting the Knicks money line tonight, boys. I think it's minus 130. I think that's what we're going with. Cool.
I give you credit. I'm not sure that I would, but let's go Knicks still.
every time we think the Knicks are going to win, they lose. And every time we think they're going to lose, they win. And everyone thinks they're going to lose tonight. So they're obviously going to win. And they're going to break our hearts in Game 6 in Indiana. But I like the Knicks tonight. Okay, gentlemen, a happy birthday in advance to Mrs. Sports Lawless getting married. Getting her birthday. We won't say which birthday, but her birthday is next week, probably by the time we record next. So yeah, good times. Happy birthday, Mrs. Sports Lawless, Rachel. Darin and Mike, I think we're good. I don't think we have anything else to hit.
Oh, let's get out of here and let's go Knicks. Happy birthdays.
Let's get out of here. Let's go Knicks. Oh, and shout out to myself. Can I say this? I play a lot of golf. Try to play a lot of golf. Busted up my elbow. I got a little golfer's elbow, a little tennis elbow going on. Get a little tendonitis. But I bared down, and on Saturday, I broke 90 at a very hard course for the first time this season. So we'll now set the goal at 85, but we're marching the handicap down. The handicap is moving closer. We're now sitting at a 16.8, gentlemen. This time last year, I was sitting at a 21. I was an ugly handicap. We're making moves, gentlemen. We're making moves. And we have not forgotten about this potential golf event. Alex, the reason he's on, and I forgot to bring this up, I've told him that Pace Law School should start the version of UVA's softball tournament for golf. How much fun would that be? Because we're in the middle of Westchester. Darin likes it. Everyone likes it. Spoke to Themis. They liked it, but they said that Pace has to do all the work, and the Themis might come as a sponsor. So, listen, I don't know how realistic this thing is. I'm going to try to make it happen. And if it doesn't happen, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's Alex's fault. So if you want to find Alex, you can yell at him. If you want to find Sal Volcano, you can yell at him about his distant relative, Alex. And certainly yell at him because he bet on the Pacers tonight. Gentlemen, let us end the podcast here. Pleasure you guys joining us and wishing everybody a happy weekend. And see you next time on another episode of Conduct Detrimental.